Hello and welcome to episode 13 of Hearthbound, where three lifelong friends set out on a virtual quest through the pages of iconic book series, all while celebrating every trip through a portal with a pour of their favorite pumpkin porter promptly. My name is Lou Chapman, and I'm accompanied by Matt Mullen and Sean Martz, the Larry and Curly to my Mo. In this episode, we finish the namesake chapter of The Last Wish, the first book in the Witcher series. In case you haven't heard, we finally narrowed our search for next season's book down to 4, and we want you to help us pick. Over on Twitter, at HearthboundPod, you can vote for which book you think we should read in our upcoming season. Make sure to share the poll to help drive votes for the book you want us to read. The book with the most votes after a week of voting will be the book we read in Season 2. Enough about voting, though. This is a long episode, but we promise it's worth it. So pull another one from the tap, slip on your best portal shoes, and toss another log on the fire because this is Hearthbound.
Cue intro.
Well,
Does that work for you, Lou?
That worked for me. That was good enough. I think I'm ready to go.
He put his podcast voice on. Did you hear that, Matt?
We are ready.
You could have flicked a switch on for Lou's podcast voice.
I don't understand. There's not a big difference between right now.
Oh,
and
there's
the
a big
previous
difference.
conversation.
There's a big difference.
Listener, do I have a podcast voice?
You become.
We need to start posting the video of Lou getting into podcast mode because the shoulders roll back a little bit. Guys.
You become exponentially more full of shit.
Well, the real
we weren't frustrated
question,
10 seconds ago.
The real important question is, do I sound different to the listeners as a married man?
This guy.
As of the 10th of October, 2020, I am a married man. She did it. She went through with it. She did not leave me there. She came down the aisle.
12 years in the making.
12 years in the making, and finally tied the knot last
this
Saturday.
episode's not going to come out for a couple weeks. But doesn't matter. At the time of recording.
Yeah, it was last Saturday. And we were all there. The boys were there. They helped me usher in this new part of my life with lots of beer, lots of whiskey, lots of bourbon.
Yeah.
Lots of dancing.
I'm drinking. Is this a ram's horn?
It is an elk's horn. Elk's horn, actually.
All right.
Or no, not an elk. What is... Oh, crap. I forget.
Reindeer?
Yes, reindeer. I think it's a reindeer horn. But yeah, I got the...
Which one?
Got the boy...
It's Cupid. He killed Cupid.
I think Sean got Cupid. I got the boys some cool drinking horns. Thanks, Grim Frost, for the epic drinkware. Made for a really good time on Saturday and Friday night. But now back to reality. Now back to recording episodes for you, dear listener. And
what episode is it?
This is episode 13. Lucky number
the
13.
The last episode of The Last Wish, the first book in the Witcher series.
Well, we just painted ourselves in a corner. We need to finish it now.
Yeah.
13. We're in the month of October. On the 13th of October.
What?
Oh. Man, first Dick Goddard and now this.
Oh, geez, what's going to happen now?
Oh, man, I forgot Dick Goddard. Fuck 2020.
Right?
Oh, whoops.
Jeez.
Well, we broke the F barrier.
Rip Eddie Vedder.
And explicit.
Or not Eddie Vedder, Eddie Van Halen.
Oh, God, I was like, Eddie Vedder died too? No. This year sucks. This year's the worst. Oh, rip Eddie Van Halen.
Yeah. But let's get back to the book, boys?
Yeah, before I start crying.
Where did we leave off here, Shawnee boy?
Oh, that's a great question. I think we were in the last chapter of The Last Wish. And it was right after Geralt went through the portal with the love of my life, Yennefer.
Yes, Yennefer
Yes.
forcefully, or I guess not forcefully, but definitely against his better judgment, made Geralt go through a portal that she created so they could cross town to go help out Geralt's good old pal Dandelion.
This, for the people reading along, is section 5 is where we're starting today's episode, all the way to the end of the book. So at this point, our boy, frat boy Dandy, is in a lot of trouble. He opened a jar, just kind of a recap of last episode. He opened this jar that they found whilst fishing for a 12-foot catfish, so dinner for weeks. And they found this jar and released this djinn from it, which immediately threw its mitts around Dandelion's throat, trying to kill him. But Geralt said some words that he didn't even know what he was saying. It's an exorcism. The thing flies away. So the whole point of coming and finding Yennefer, pretty much accidentally, was because Dandelion was going to die if he didn't get some heavy-duty magic treatment. So heavy-duty that Geralt couldn't do it himself. So we stumble upon some half-elves outside the gates, and it brings us to section 5, where Yennefer goes to care to him, and Geralt is kind of put in a timeout while she's working her magic on Dandelion.
But he's very patient. He's a very patient toddler in timeout. He understands that, I think like they open with him and Careerdan, who's one of the Hellfafs that Dandelion was staying with while Geralt went and fetched Yennefer. Careerdan is flipping an hourglass and says something to the tune of, like, that's another hour gone by, because, like, Yennefer's been in this room with Dandelion for quite a long time, but Geralt's, like, the first to kind of say, well, look, I understand magic takes a long time, and I think it kind of gives you, like, a scope of, like, Geralt's appreciation for Yennefer's help here, and it gives you an appreciation for, like, Yennefer is definitely more skilled than Geralt in the arts of magic, like right out of the gate.
Yeah, she's kind of just laying it all out for Geralt. From the time that they actually meet, she is just kind of showboating, but it's what Geralt is kind of explaining is showboating, but she is just that badass. So right away, she's throwing Geralt around the room initially, because he's not who he says he is, and he just needs her. But she is Geralt's match, in a sense, intellectually, but way beyond Geralt in terms of magic ability. And while they're in this conversation, there are a few other elves, half-elves that are introduced while they're waiting for, kind of that doctor's lobby.
Yeah, waiting room.
Like her to come out and go, all right, so he's going to be fine. But, like, Geralt has had at least a little bit of time to, like, meet everybody, at least surface level enough. Like, we meet Sheridan, I think that's his name, his, like, wife, or not wife, it's one of the elves' wives comes into play, but there was a vocab word right off the bat. I mean, it's my first note, which is taciturn, is the way that they describe this elf.
Ooh.
Which means she was essentially really quiet and saying very little. So, I mean, that was kind of anticlimactic for me. I was just like, ooh, what does this word mean? And then it was just like, she was just quiet. Like, sweet.
Yeah, that's definitely anticlimactic. Just tacitone. She was quiet.
So while they're waiting, Sheridan, he kind of like is trying to sway Geralt's opinion about Yennefer, because he's like, you know what? I just need all the help I can get. I would literally sit on a scorpion if it would mean that Dandy's going to be okay. And he's like, well, Yennefer knows that, and she's going to use that against you. Like, I know that you see this, like, really pretty figure, and she's, witty and smart, and she's powerful and all these things, and I think you're getting caught up in that. And Geralt's like, whatever, and Geralt just thinks it's all, you think she's beautiful. And he kind of avoids, because I think they said because he's an elf, he's kind of avoiding giving her compliments or like describing how he feels about her. But Geralt's just kind of like,
you got the hots for her too.
He's really laying it on thick of, hey, don't mess with Yennefer. She'll cross you, man. you better be careful. It's like, you sound super jealous right now.
and Geralt even kind of mentions like elves aren't typically attracted to human women, and and he kind of says like it seems like it's split between it's a reason why Yennefer is so beautiful, and then like I think he said something about like just like the personality of this. I think his name's Círdan. I think that's at least how the voice actor says him. It's Círdan. I don't know how it's spelled.
All right, we're drinking either way.
You were drinking either way, yeah. But then Yennefer kind of opens the door and finally says, all right.
I'm not ready to move on from that because you brought up a good point that it says that, elves aren't wont to admire human women, even the very beautiful ones. And Yennefer, although attractive in her own way, couldn't pass as a great beauty. So I thought that was interesting that for everything she's got going for her, she is not a great beauty. And they go on to talk more about sorceresses and what happens to them. And they talk about how most of the sorceresses aren't beautiful, but they go through these mutations, these somatic mutations. And somatic was a vocab word that I had, and it just means like of the body. So they talk about these, and they say the young sorceresses would become attractive because the prestige of their profession demanded it. And the result was a pseudo-pretty women with the angry, cold eyes of ugly girls. Girls who couldn't forget their ugliness had been covered by the mask of magic only for the prestige of their profession. I had that highlighted because I thought that was really
some heavy stuff.
Yeah, really heavy.
Really deep.
And I thought they also bring up that like not only, but the majority of women that go into this magic field are of humble or homely origins. I'm not sure exactly the words they use, but that's the connotation that you get. And it's because, pretty daughters get married off, right? And by the time that like these women get through this magic school, like they really have no ties to their family at all. So like sending them away to these schools, I mean, kind of into like a pseudo, I don't want to say slavery, but like they're being sent away against their will, and they're becoming something that they didn't sign up to become. So I don't know if that's slavery, if it's a different kind of flavor, but like by the end of it,
culty. Definitely
kind of
like a cultish.
But by the end of it, they have absolutely no ties to their family. And then like Sean had pointed out, they get to these transformations so that they meet the expectations of what a female wizard should look like, essentially, is what they describe. So Yennefer is no exception here, but as I was about to say, she opens the door that she's into the room that she's been helping Dandelion in, and she ushers Geralt in, come on in, I need to talk to you now. So Geralt kind of goes up, steals a glance with Círdan before he heads up, and kind of like that, like, remember all the stuff I told you kind of look. And he gets up there and like he starts describing all of the little imperfections that he sees in her. Like he says her left shoulder is a little bit higher than her right, and her eyebrows are a little bit unruly. And like the author paints a really good picture of him listening to the conversation with Círdan and like thinking about Yen, and then all of a sudden trying to find all of these nitpicky imperfections. And even Yennefer kind of notices that like, he's paying closer attention. And then Geralt walks into the room, and he notices that there is a pentagram on the floor, and there's like a glowing fire lamp hanging up against the ceiling. And he immediately realizes that like some shit's about to go down in this room.
That and like, I know this Círdan is having the biggest "I freaking told you so" moment as soon as he crosses the threshold of this door. Like, because as I was reading it, and I've seen it in the show, so I kind of already knew what happened, but what happens in the book is obviously way cooler in this chapter. But the whole conversation with Círdan, I was like, this is way too specific. Spider sense is tingling. Like, Zoic Scoob, don't do this. Like, don't go in there, and especially after that last look. It's a trap. Don't go in there.
Admiral
like
Akbar.
She's
it's
not.
A trap.
Don't go in there at all. Like it's all coming to reality. As he walks through the door, he's looking at the floor, and the quote that I pulled out of here that I thought was really awesome is they kind of draw this whole like simile type thing of that the symbols on the floor, like Geralt, he kind of knew of them, but he didn't know what all of them were for. So he had this like curiosity. He said it's kind of like looking at a sleeping lion, wondering what the roar sounds like. And I was like, it's super cool of the author. I don't know if he did it on purpose or not, but I'll give him the credit. Is that he used this curiosity aspect, so like the curiosity killed the cat type thing, and that he used the lion specifically. I thought that was a little ironic.
That is.
That he used that to describe like, ooh, what are these for? Like Geralt is so into it when he walks in the room. He's like, like Dandy's okay, but there's pentagrams painted on the floor, some black candles lit. Like something's weird, and and he doesn't know what it's all for.
Not yet, at least.
Not yet. It's bad news.
At this point, Yennefer had trapped me as well, because I wasn't aware that Geralt was walking into a trap. And I was like, oh, she had to use a pentagram to heal him. She must be into dark magic. That was the first thought that popped into my head. I was like, well, at least he's healed. And then she sprang the trap, and I felt personally trapped by her springing this trap. And I really understood what Geralt was going through in this moment.
Man.
Sean would be kidnapped by Jeffrey Dahmer.
That's so messed up.
But yes, as the boys were talking about, Geralt and Yennefer are starting to talk, and Geralt's got the spidey sense tingling a little bit, but more or less he's trying to figure out how he can get his friend to safety. And Dandelion is described as laying on the bed, and he's having a very pleasurable dream. And he even interrupts their conversation a few times, talking about someone named Virginia with wonderful bosoms. And Geralt even comments a few more times when Dandelion moans like a moron, which I thought was hysterical. Just like, oh God, we're trying to have a serious conversation, and Dandelion's over here talking, dreaming about some waitress.
I was going to say, right in the middle of this conversation is Geralt's asking her a bunch of questions, and a new vocab word comes up for me, and it was coquettishly, and the root of that would be coquette, which is like flirt. So flirtily, she answers him. So she's smiling flirtily at him, and she basically says, "How should I answer your question? None of your damn business." And then boom.
Yeah. So that all kind of goes back to, as soon as he walks in the room, he is still kind of this lust, like love at first sight thing that he seemingly has for Yennefer, and she's playing into it. Like all of her conversations with him have all kind of played into it so far. Like every action that she has, the author's just describing what Geralt is seeing as like everything she's doing. He's considering what this Círdan guy is saying. He's still like totally into her, but she literally like tells him like, well, now I have you trapped, and she's like locking the door, and everything's so flirty and playful that even Geralt's like, alas, so I'm trapped. Mm-hmm. Like, now what should I do? I'm a witcher trapped in your spell, like blah, blah, blah. And then turns out he literally gets trapped into her spell. She wants the lid that goes to the jar that was holding the djinn captive. She needs that. Because she is trying to capture the djinn. And Geralt, at this point, he's throwing back some things, the sarcasm, because he thinks, at least the way I read it, that she's kidding. And he's just like, yeah, sure, whatever. Like, take the lid. I don't care. And that'll be a sign of my gratitude to you, and blah, blah, blah. And she's just like,
for saving Dandelion.
Right. And she's just like, well, no. Like, this is just the beginning. Like, it's going to come in waves. Like, I still need him. And then Geralt's like, oh crap, wait a minute. She's not kidding anymore. I am literally trapped.
Yeah, this veil of flirtation has it starts slowly getting lifted, and Geralt starts like connecting like, well, wait, here's the lid to the jar. Let me go ahead and take Dandelion back to somewhere safe. And then he kind of realizes like, so you mean to summon this demon, this djinn, back to this place to capture it? Fine, I really don't give a shit, but let me take Dandelion back. And she counters as saying, no, I actually need Dandelion here while I do it. And then that's where this conversation comes to a head where, Geralt says, look, you can do whatever you want to me. Like, here's the lid, and he kind of gives that like, if you even want me, we can talk about that later, but I'll be back after Dandelion's safe. And then like in the middle of this argument, he freezes. and this trap is sprung, and he realizes that this whole time that she literally locked him in the door, she started casting this like paralyzation spell on top of him, and he all of a sudden can't move. And she kind of goes evil villain monologue on him, and it's just like, I was wondering how long that would take to affect you. And she starts explaining the whole reason behind everything that she's doing. And she goes, I don't care how much you struggle, I don't care what you think, I'm always going to get what I want, and right now I need your friend to grant his last wish so I can capture this djinn.
Dude, to me, this was the entire book. We're reading about what is a monster, and it's coming in all of these forms. To find out in the last chapter that the greatest monster of them all is women. I mean, shots fired.
Yikes!
Oh my
Wait,
god!
Did I read that note right?
Maybe you meant a woman.
Say sorceress.
Yeah, that's my woman there.
Witch.
You better watch your mouth, Matt.
In all honesty, all jokes, horrible jokes aside, I actually stopped because I've seen the show, I've seen what happens, and the way that this plays out in the book, this situation in general is very different in a sense. And I thought that this whole idea of the monster, I was waiting for that to happen. So people, no matter what, are capable or have potential to be monsters, is I think the point or the theme that this is reaching. Like, there's a little bit of monster inside of everybody, but it's like up to us whether we can contain it or not, or use it or not.
I want to circle back around on that on the outro of this chapter, because I really like the point you're bringing up, and I've thought the same things.
Yeah, and I mean, this is just the point that I started seeing that really shine through, is that there's just been a debate about defining it as one thing or another, when in reality so far this has just been, everybody has, even Geralt has shown in the entire book that he is capable of doing some monster type things. So
I don't know. I don't know if I buy all this. We'll circle back and talk about it, but I don't know.
All right.
I see where you guys are going, but I'm not sure I buy into it. So, but to kind of put a close on this part of this section of this chapter, after he has been paralyzed, she kind of tells him, like, you're going to pay me what I want, or you're going to pay me for my services here, whether you like it or not. And she goes in and she kisses him. And in her kiss, you kind of get the sense that a lot more is happening in Geralt's mind other than just kissing Yennefer. And he becomes kind of put into a trance. He describes that, like, all of a sudden he finds himself on his knees in front of her. And she says, now you may remember your orders. You may go do them now. And he's like, yes, my lady. And he's like, all out of it and stuff like that. And he kind of remembers walking out of the room that they're in, and then out of the inn itself, and being chased down the street, trying to be stopped by this Círdan. And that's pretty much the end of this section, other than the fact that he thinks his last thought is there's a storm coming. And then that is the end of this part. Ooh, beer check.
Yeah. Well, beer check. What a good time to open Contact Haze. This hazy IPA.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, Geralt is quite literally under her spell. I mean, classic witch move. And he is not just, like, coming out of it. I kind of related to, at least the way that it's written, because I really like the way that it showed almost like anesthesia, where you're just remembering bits and pieces and then nothing at all. But then in the next section 6, you're kind of getting the other end of Geralt kind of coming out of it, and Círdan's like, dude, wake up. And they're in a
they're in the dungeon.
Cell.
Yeah.
And he's essentially living the hangover. Like, he's like, what happened, man? And they're like, what happened? That. Let me tell you what happened. And all of these, like, things that they're saying, like, he at one point just, like, marched down the street, pulled out what would be the mayor of the town.
No, not the mayor. It was a pawnbroker, I think.
Okay, yeah. And pretty much speaking, not his own words, obviously, but all of this is part of Yennefer's spell, is making him do and say things that she wants to do, but she has him as, like, the catalyst now, walking around and doing her bidding. Yeah, things like spanking this dude in front of the entire town.
And like throwing his assistant out the window. Yeah. Geralt's talking to Círdan like, okay, yeah, and then what happened after that? And Círdan's like, what happened after that? Well, after that, you went over to this guy's place, and then you tore his whole house and his business up. And then you were on your way to the church, and you were about to go whoop up on the head priest over there. And Geralt's like,
great, blasphemy.
Oh, God.
This is giving me terrible PTSD of when I drink. So
Yes. It's not. It's after you've drank. This is the in between drinking and remembering the next day.
Right. This is a hangover PTSD that Geralt's getting right now. And so we find out he does a bunch of terrible stuff, and he's in jail right now. And then all of a sudden, the jailer comes up. And what happens to the jailer?
The events that lead up to this kind of reveals an interesting plot twist to the whole Jinn chapter, because it started off with Dandelion releasing the Jinn, and the entire time we've thought so far to this point, and to me, this is kind of the reveal of this point in the chapter. But Dandelion thought that he was the master, quote unquote, of this Jinn, and that he had 3 wishes. And we, throughout this chapter, learn a little bit about Jinns, which we will talk about in a minute. But one of the things being that even though they grant the wishes, they're not always... They don't want to.
Yeah, they want to find all the loopholes and make your life hell for making you make them do something.
So, I mean, later we find out that like the reason Dandelion was choked out in the first place and had his throat swell was so he couldn't speak his 3 wishes. So the Jinn didn't have to do it. So I thought that was pretty cool. Like it kind of gives some human-like qualities to this Jinn monster thing.
No, I don't think. I'm gonna put a pin in that. We're gonna move on from that because we find out some information later that I think is relevant.
Yes,
but then to a point about storytelling, I completely understand the flashback hangover storytelling method, but I'm not a big fan of it when it comes to books. I feel like, I don't want to say it's lazy, but like there's something about like reading action as it happens versus it being told over. Like I feel like it would have been so much more fun, and it is so much more enjoyable when you read about Geralt kicking ass in a town, right? Like just the Butcher of Blaviken chapter, go listen to that. Like listen to that, and then go ahead and listen to Círdan reviewing what Geralt did in town. Now, granted, he did a lot less worse things in this town than he did in Blaviken, but to me, at least, it's not as fun to read.
Because my only rebuttal to that would be that we, the reader, have been walking side by side with Geralt the entire time. We are essentially seeing the world through Geralt's eyes, and everything's being described through Geralt's eyes in a way, and kind of having that moment of you don't remember anything. I do agree where it's kind of like, I would have liked to read all of those things that he did in the moment that he did them, and Círdan trying to stop him, but I didn't think that the fact that he woke up in the prison, we also wake up in that prison with him. Like, what the heck happened? How did I get here?
I didn't have that same feeling, Lou, and I wonder if that's because you're primarily listening to the book. So you have an additional element that Matt and I don't have, or rather Matt and I have to make up in our heads. You have the tone of the story as it's being read. And Matt and I have to make that tone up as we're reading it and just rely on the author's interpretation. So I personally felt like I was there because, well, I saw what happened, right? He threw the guy out the window and he kicked him in the you-know-where and all this. So I wonder if it's a tone thing, which is...
That is interesting.
I don't know, just a different take on it.
That is an interesting thing. But okay, to go back to the story itself.
In the prison, we have... Geralt is actually approached by the guards open the door and everyone kind of scatters and he's just like him. One of the guards like points to Geralt. They grab him and immediately pretty much shove him into a corner. And I believe there is a guy as, quote, bald as a knee. Is the main thing. I've never heard that in my life.
That is pretty funny.
He's the main guy. He's the aggressor, and he's saying that he's there on behalf of the mayor, the king, whatever.
No, he's there behalf of the merchant the first merchant that he brought out into the street and like whipped him in the ass with his belt.
Right, so he's kind of explaining like, oh, he wants to know if everything's okay down here, and then gut punches him as hard as he can, and like Geralt can't defend himself or even soften the blow, and they kind of say that he doesn't want to at that point. I think in Geralt's mind, through all the things, his experience and everything, he just knows like the sooner I pass out, the less this will hurt for me. Mm-hmm.
So I got a different view of that, Matt. I felt that this was Geralt just kind of owning up to his sins, right? He was like, I was stupid enough to get trapped in this witch's spell, and I did terrible things, and now I have to own that. So I'm just going to take my punishment here.
See, right. And I took it a third way. When I was listening to it, I thought it was Geralt trying to direct the incoming blows. Like Geralt, because like early in the chapter, like Círdan mentions that like if the king or if the mayor doesn't come back in time, like we'll most likely be in the hangman's noose by dawn. And Geralt says that like he can live with taking the punishment for himself, but you know, knowing that Círdan will die because of his sins, like drives him, like that makes him mad, essentially. So I took it as Geralt planning the attacks. Like, you know, he says like he doubles over and he leans over, and then he knows that the next punch is going to come up a little bit higher, so he like braces for that one. And not to like take the review away, but like he gets punched a few more times and he's like bracing for him, and then this warden says, do you have any wishes? Is there anything we could do to make your life better? And Geralt, like, you know, like begrudgingly or like winded goes, yeah, you could blow up. And like Geralt, it describes Geralt's bracing for the last one because he's going to dip, or he's going to dodge it, or he's going to somehow like try to do something to gain the upper hand. And it never comes because, as he wished for, this guard just blows up like a balloon. And those that have seen the show, it's pretty much the exact same way that's described in the book. And then that's the cut. And it's then Matt was talking about that you realize that Geralt is the one that's holding the wishes, where we as the reader thought that Dandelion had all of the wishes and was just attacked by the djinn. We realize that it was Geralt that was wishing for Dandelion to shut up while the djinn was attacking that caused the djinn to close Dandelion's throat.
Yeah. The only reason why I would, I guess, not... Well, I guess I would disagree with what you said is only because it says that he was hit there the same spot twice. He was just kind of taking it, which I get what Sean is saying about the he just wanted to take his blows. But he also says the thing that kind of drove me to that, my conclusion was that, and he had to faint because he cared for his internal organs. So he's getting hit in the same exact spot, and he knows that if I take any more hits in the same spot, like it's going to start doing some internal bleeding damage, and I can't take that. So he's spending, he leans over, he's trying to just, like, okay, and he stands up one more time, and I'm going to kind of blend mine and Sean's and yours together, I guess. I think he was just trying to buy time, or to, if he does faint or does die from these blows, it's going to be done in an unjust way, so maybe they would spare the others, because they didn't really have... He's paying for his sins. In a way, he's saving the others, but as we know, that's not what happens, because the guard literally explodes. And again, that's the cut. So then we go to part 7.
So real quick, Matt, I just reread this, and it said that, just what you said, Matt. He didn't faint, but he had to. And the next sentence is, in order to faint, he had to force the guard to, and then it cuts off. And the guard says, what, you don't have any last wishes, basically? And then Geralt says, just that you burst, you son of a whore. And then it says the guard wound up aiming for Geralt's head, just like he had planned, just like Geralt had planned.
Oh, okay.
So, yeah. So I think it does kind of amalgamate into something that makes sense. Apparently the author does know what he's talking about.
Yeah. Listener, you be the final judge.
You be the judge. And that's kind of what I like about the show, is because they take... And again, this book's translated, so it could have been lost in translation and one of those things, but I do like how in the show they really kind of replicate this scene like verbatim. I mean, they don't take every single detail, but they give you a lot of what's going on, and especially the bursting. But in section 7, this is kind of like there's a lot of bouncing around starting from section 7 to the end of the chapter. It gets quicker and quicker with these cuts, almost like a scene change. But we have the aftermath of this exploding man, and people are coming down and they're like, what happened in here? What kind of sorcery is this? And Geralt and, they're all just sitting there like, I don't know. And I think that's when, they start to put the pieces of the puzzle together, at least in Geralt's mind. He's kind of recapping because he needs to tell exactly what happened or they're going to hang him. They're going to kill him. So Geralt's like, all right, verbatim tells, the guy, Prophet Libodis.
Yeah, I think it's Libodis.
Is that okay? Cool, nailed it. And then Mayor Neville, which I had some Harry Potter flashbacks, but there is the mayor who's down there, like pretty much pacing back and forth, like trying to figure out what is happening. And this is when we get kind of the background about the jinns, the genies, the elementals. So I guess we can take it from there.
So yeah, this priest that is with Neville the mayor kind of goes into school lecture mode and talks about how wizards harness power based off the 4 elements, and they kind of describe them as like 4 different planes, which kind of like, to me, like
water, earth,
fire and
air. Long ago, the 4 nations lived together in harmony. Then everything changed when the Fire Nation attacked.
They weren't 4 nations. They were 4 different planes. And the genies are like spirits that are part of these 4 planes. And they go through that, like, the jinn is the air genie. And then they name the other 3 genies for the respective...
Marids are associated with water, Afreet are fire, and Tao are genies of the earth.
Yes. So, and these genies, like in any other kind of fairy tale, gives wishes, 3 wishes to whoever frees them, but at the cost of you might not be getting exactly what you want because the genie's pissed off that it has to fulfill these wishes, right? So they'll look for every loophole and they'll try to make, everything a pain in the butt. But some of these, I said but some of these these genies have been captured by wizards, and they're like a direct connection to these elemental planes. So they're very, very powerful tools. And this priest is like, this one wizard used a jinn to move a mountain that was obstructing his view from his tower. So you immediately get the idea that, this is what Yennefer wants.
I think the book's explanation of why she needs it so bad is a billion times better than the show, because the idea in the show that's brought up is that magic has a cost. You have to give something to get something. So there's a small sacrifice. Like, I think in the show, the one girl tries to make a rock float and she's not holding the flower. So her hand literally starts to decompose right on her. And they're like, everything comes with a cost. So you have to hold the flower to raise the rock. Then the flower dies, blah, blah, blah. So in this case, they're saying that if a sorcerer or a wizard or a knowing one can get a hold and harness that power, they literally have it's just infinite, unlimited power.
just magic bank.
So they don't have to sacrifice any of their own energy to create magic anymore because they have an unlimited source from an elemental plane. So I was like, that is a really cool way to explain how magic works in a book.
Mm-hmm. It's amazing.
So that is when everything starts clicking for everyone. Geralt's like, crap, she's trying to capture this thing for whatever. In the show, they kind of say it's because she's infertile and
because she had to give up. She had to give up her the ability to have children.
Yeah, to become what she is, and she's trying to, get all this untapped power to try to reverse that. And that's how the show takes it, which isn't totally wrong in the book. But the fact that she can have that cosmic phenomenal power and it live in space.
It's because she's a witch and she turned me into a newt. But I got better.
Yes.
Yeah.
Basically, they're explaining and they're going, Geralt, what exactly happened? And Geralt's like, we opened the genie and then I performed this exorcism and he went away. And they're like, well, what was the exorcism? And Geralt says it and they kind of laugh at him and he's like, okay. And Geralt's like, I don't know what it means. But then all of a sudden, boom, out of nowhere, Dandelion gets teleported in. And Dandelion goes, he's innocent, he's innocent, he's innocent. And he just jumps up and he's screaming that. And they're like, Dandelion, what? Okay, how did you get here? And he's like, I have no clue. It's basically a nightmare. And there was this long cool woman in a black dress. Basically what he has to say, he's like, listen, I have to come here and I have to say my wish is for you to believe that the Witcher is not guilty for what occurred. That and no other is my wish. Word for word. And so he tries to say that. And he's trying to, and this is the point where I figured out that Yennefer was trying to spare Geralt. Even after she set him up to take the fall as, he's the sacrificial goat. She sends Dandelion, she goes on this errand of like, well, if he has to use a wish, let's at least save Geralt because he was kind of useful to me.
Yeah.
I feel bad. I thought that was the next section, but yes.
Oh, no, my bad. I have the book right in front of me, so
Well,
felt
so do
like
I, and that's why I feel like an idiot.
No, it was a very stark, like, one point to the next, and these next couple sections do jump around just like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's very tennis-like, where it's bouncing back from perspectives on where characters are versus what is going on, and they're just looking at things going on in one perspective, and then the other, they're like in the action. So, like I said, it kind of speeds up. But yes, he kind of just enter Dandelion, enters room, and he's trying to explain all this. This is when we also learn what the incantation, the whole chapter, since Geralt said the exorcism in whatever language that he didn't know what it meant, we've been trying to figure out what it actually meant because Yennefer made fun of him for it earlier in the chapter, and we're like, what does that mean? And we finally learn that it means, quote, get out of here and go fuck yourself. So we also know that is exactly what happened. As soon as Geralt said that, the djinn left in the beginning of the chapter, which is also another clue that was his first wish. Check off the list. The djinn went away. And then the second one being what? I just had a brain fart.
That the guy blows up.
The guy, yes, the guard explodes. So then the last wish is going to be
what we don't know.
Get around to. Right. We don't know what it's going to be, but that is what the next section, section 8, kind of pushes toward.
Yeah, just before section 8, they look out the window and they see like the djinn coming in, like this giant storm coming over the mountains kind of thing.
Is it in this section? Because like I said, like the guys have been saying, the audiobook is jumping all over as well. So is it in this section that the djinn starts attacking the town, or is that in the next section?
It's this section. So Geralt in section 8 looks at, because there's this like booming noise off in the distance, and everyone's kind of looking out the window. It's powerful enough to shake the prison that they are currently in. So everybody's looking out the window and sees this black storm cloud, which I think Dandelion points out is the djinn. And Geralt kind of flashes back to this memory in section 8 of him as a boy learning how to be a witcher, and they pretty much strapped a bee down. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Is that this section?
Yeah, how do you tie a bee?
I don't know. that was my question. I'm like, this is a very odd flashback to go back to in Geralt's mind, like all this destruction. He's like, you know what this reminds me of? An insect. But not at all. Yeah, so he pretty much explains, this reminds me of this time we tied a bee down, and I got I got spanked for it because, my Witcher dad found out that we had strapped this defenseless creature to something, and we just watched it struggle. And then he goes on to say that, well, It's kind of like that, but not at all, because the djinn was just destroying everything. It was trapped, but it had wiggle room. So it's like taking chimneys out, ripping roofs off, and everyone's like, oh my gosh, somebody's got to stop that thing. And Geralt's like, I'll do it. Yeah. And everyone's like, no.
This to me felt as if Godzilla was destroying Tokyo, but it was this town, and Godzilla was this nebulous storm thing, just this cloud of destruction and chaos.
That was being tied up by these wisps of magic that Yennefer was controlling. Because we realized that all of this focal point of the tie down on this djinn is coming from the room where Dandelion was being treated a few moments ago, and the teleport or the portal that Dandelion just came in through is still like there's still a faint image of it in the air, and Geralt tells this priest like, hey, look there's her portal. Reactivate that portal and I'll jump through and I'll go help her get rid of this djinn, or I'll stop her from capturing the djinn. And the priest is kind of like, don't worry about it. Yeah, the chimneys will break and all this will happen. But you know what? Yeah, that djinn's going to be way too powerful for Yennefer, so she's probably just going to die. And you know what? Overall positive
Problem
for the town.
Solved.
Exactly. So, but Geralt's like, no, I can't have this because, he's thinking about Yennefer. And he forces the priest to open this portal back up, and he jumps through and, going to be on the other side where Yennefer is fighting the djinn. And that's where the next section pops into play.
Yes. And again, we're pretty much spiraling into this Rick and Morty type play on portals in this chapter. This portal opens immediately. Geralt flops through it, and he thinks he's still going through the portal because it's so shaky, but in reality, the building that he is teleported into is shaking because of the djinn that is trapped in Yennefer's pentagram thing that she had painted on the floor and all that. It's kind of trapped. And Geralt is trying to convince her to just get out of there. Like, this is a lost cause. Even if you were to capture it, whatever happens, it's going to kill you. And in Yennefer's mind, she thinks that Dandelion, he already made his last wish. This thing should be easy to catch. This makes no sense. I don't know why it's so strong. And Geralt's like, it's way too strong. And he's trying to explain to her that he's the holder of the wishes, but she's taking it as Geralt's just trying to stop her and save her and being an idiot as she has predetermined him to be. So there's this like wrestling of what you should do and what you shouldn't do. And she's like, well, get yourself out of here. I'm going to pop open a portal for you. And he's like, I'm not going without you. And I'm like, oh my God, Geralt, this is the dumbest thing you've done. And you've made some bad choices. And so he kind of like tackles her through the portal into this dinner party. Like,
I have this part highlighted. It says, Geralt grabbed her hands and to avoid being hit by her forehead, thrust his face into the sorcerer's cleavage, which smelled of lilac, gooseberries, and oysters.
And oysters.
And little oysters.
Well, it smells like oysters because, as Matt was saying, Geralt like tackles her through this portal to make her follow him through the portal that she brought up for him to get to safety, and they land in a dinner party. And
in the middle of a set, like these guys are playing instruments. It's this whole party. They land right on the dinner table through the portal, which she said, I don't know where it's going to go, which I knew immediately they're both going to go through this, and it's going to be embarrassing for both of them. So trying to picture being either a musician at that party or literally anyone in the room with Yennefer and Geralt falling through a portal in the middle of your dinner, destroying everything, and then not only that, fist fighting, rolling through the dinner, blaming each other for things that you have no idea what they're talking about. They're just like, I had it. No, you didn't have it. And I just thought of like, Morty, you blew it, Morty. And then just like, Rick, well, like the whole section was just one big episode of Rick and Morty. You know, they go back and forth, and the guy who's hosting the party is just like, this is madness, you know, and just in awe that this is happening at all. And then Yennefer's like, oh, I'm going back. Let's like open the portal. And Geralt's like, well, I'm going, and tackles her back through the portal. And they hear like the faint sound of him going, you've seen nothing. Play the music. Go like this was.
Pay
this
no
never
attention
happened.
to the Witcher and the wizard that have fallen through the ceiling.
It's so funny. Like in this serious moment, this is like the super comical scene of just nonsense. Like if you were a person at that party, you're like, this is the best concert I've ever been to.
Yeah. And the whole time Geralt's like trying so hard to explain to Yennefer that like, I have the last wish. The third wish has not been fulfilled. You're not going to be able to. And she just keeps, no, you don't think I'm strong enough. You don't think I can do this. No, I know you can't do this. No one can do this. Why aren't you? And it's just like.
Yeah, she's just like, you just think I'm a hot piece of ass. Like, and then she'll wrap him up and he's just like, ah! Like, listen to me.
You're not wrong, but you're wrong.
Yeah.
Well, yes, but no, but yes, but no.
Exactly. So then, in the chaos between going through portals and stuff, we switch to another section, and it's back to the perspective of those at the mayor's house or the town hall they were being imprisoned at, and Dandelion and the priest and the mayor are all talking, and they're all talking about like the different problems that they're gonna have as soon as this fight ends. The mayor's like, oh no, there goes that person's house. Like, we won't have a brickmaker for a while. And then the priest is like, well, I cannot finally wait for Yennefer to be out of this town. We might as well make 2 caskets right now. This death is for sure. And Dandelion's like, what is Geralt doing? What is this idiot doing? Do you see the size of that thing?
The best part of this section is that, like, Neville, the mayor, is pointing out to Mr. Airedale, who is half elf, I think, or is full on elf. And the elf, he's just like, yep, it's whatever. Like, I don't even care. And they're like, that's your house, you idiot. And then he's like, I have insurance, and it's like the payout is going to be nuts. And he's like, oh, it covers supernatural events. And he goes, why wouldn't it? And he goes, well, congratulations. Like,
well played.
Casual tavern conversation, and Dandelion's sitting there like, are you guys even like, do you care about them at all? Like, what's gonna happen? Like, he's gonna die. Like, why did he go there? That's my friend. And they're just like, I got a big payout coming, man. And he's congrats. Like, this is good for you. And then clip section part 10 back into the crap. Right?
But he asked Caridian, why do you go? Why did Geralt go there? Do you understand? And Caridian goes, he smiled sadly and said, yes, I understand. I understand why he went.
This dude is just like in the friend zone, and he doesn't care. Not one bit.
No, he knows
he just wants Yennefer so bad. It's beyond words.
Sorry, section 10. Go.
So on to section 10, and we go back through the portal from the dinner party back to the tavern, or the house, the inn, I think, is what Círdan was fixing up. And the djinn is starting to break these bonds, so he's getting like a little more wiggle room, and he's making a little bit more havoc. But now he notices Yennefer and Geralt back in the same room, so he starts going to attack them again. And just like before, Yennefer's like, now much more weaker, that she's, offered up a few portals, and she's still trying to hold the djinn down. She's trying to fight Geralt and try to capture the djinn at the same time, and it's just not going well at all. So, like, I think, like, they describe, like, she starts casting fire streams at Geralt, and he, like, easily deflects them because, like, she's just exhausted, right?
Yeah, this is the point where she actually gets a hold of him. So she's not at the point of, like, losing her touch, but she's wrapping him in these binds, and he's still trying to explain to her. So we just, very similar to like a movie or TV, it's just, it cuts back and forth between these scenes of, you have Dandelion in the tavern with Círdan and Neville and whoever else talking about stuff, and then back into the action. Back to the tavern, back to the action. And Geralt is being wrapped, and he's still at this point trying to convince her to listen to him. And she wraps him in these binds that as he struggles more, it burns him. And she's like, it's only going to burn you more if you keep struggling. Like, just stop moving and let me do what I need to do. And then it moves on to this where the djinn is, this is section 11 technically, but this is why it gets so confusing because everything's kind of blended together, all on one page really. But then the djinn is going for like Yennefer solely. Like Geralt said, it's like, this thing's going to break free and it's going to destroy you. Like, it's going to kill you instantly. Like, what are you thinking? And finally, Geralt is able to explain to her that he possesses the last wish. That the reason why this djinn is so powerful and that she hasn't been able to capture it is because of him. And she's like, if you would have let me do that, I'm trying to convince you that you won't be able to do this and you shouldn't do this, because even if I do say my last wish, it's going to kill you first. Like, it's going to fulfill my wish, but it's going to kill you after it's free.
And we've been fighting so long, you won't be able to stand a chance up against him, even after I complete my wish.
Absolutely. He's like, you're tired, you don't got it in you. And she's just like, well, watch me. And he's like, like, stop. Like, this isn't about showing how cool you are. This is about you dying. And she's like, well, so what? It'd be worth it. It's like, she's being super stubborn. Geralt's still trying to get through to her.
And while being super stubborn, she's like egging him on to like make his last wish already. She's like, you can have anything. You can have money. You can have fame. You can be, 10 foot tall or whatever she says. She goes through like this, all these, this huge list of things. And then like, she finally like clicks like, or you can be what you've always wanted to be. You can be normal. He can give you morality. He can take away all of your witcher stuff. And like, it kind of like, that, for me, this was the point of the book where it like went through the whole, the whole book flashed before my eyes, so to speak. And I was like, wow, like Geralt could erase everything. He could start over. He could just be a normal guy. But he knows that if he does and he makes that wish, that Yennefer's going to be killed directly afterwards. So he gets this immediate conflict of interest.
We get a brief bounce back to section or part 13 where it goes back to Dandelion, and every time they flash back, it's almost like a very small breadcrumb to what's about to happen. So Dandelion's like, are they both going to die? Like, what's going to happen? Like, why would he go there? Keeps asking those hard questions. And he's like, you know what? At the end of the day, he's still got one wish left. And then it pops back for section 14 with Yen really saying, like, what is it that you want? And she says, riches, fame, power, immortality. Like, what?
Right at the end of section 13, though, it says, like, he's still got, like, he could save both of them. And the priest goes, it's really not that simple. He's like, but I guess if he somehow tied his fate to the fate. No, I don't think that would occur to him, and it's probably better that it doesn't. There's a little flash forward there, just like you were saying, Matt. It's a little like voice of reason. Like, if somehow Geralt ties his fate to the fate of, and then they leave it blank, so the fate of someone or something else.
To me, the end of this book was so awesome because it played back like a movie. Like, I know that maybe for some people, the constant tennis match of going back and forth between all these perspectives would be kind of like, whatever. But I think it's really good for the climax of this entire book. We're getting to that climactic point, hopefully answering that what is a monster question, which we're going to get back around to. But Geralt is, being pressured, and he sees Yennefer kind of break at this point where she is literally going through everything, and he sees her as this, before she was this pretty Yennefer, all magicked up to be perfect. He sees her as she is, as this human, as she was before, a crippled girl, or I don't have the quote in there, but he sees her as the hunchback, is what he says.
Yeah, I've got it if you want me to read it.
Go ahead.
It says, but he suddenly knew the truth. He knew it. He knew what she used to be, what she remembered, what she couldn't forget, what she lived with, who she really was before she had become a sorceress. Her cold, penetrating, angry, and wise eyes were those of a hunchback. He was horrified. No, not of the truth. He was horrified that she would read his thoughts and find out what he had guessed, that she would never forgive him for it.
So it's like super heavy. And it said that there was like this enormous relief And instantly, that's when like the ceiling cracks open, and that's when the djinn is entangled. And there, I don't know if we mentioned it or if one of you mentioned it, but there was a point where the djinn was right in front of Geralt, and it was just there. It didn't do anything, but it was like almost talking to him, like yelling at him as if it were giving an order.
Yes,
and then
we did not bring that up.
So there's this moment where the djinn definitely could have killed them both, but it just looked at Geralt like, do something. And he's just like, So to me, that was like the djinn kind of telling him, make your last freaking wish so this can be over, please. Like, I just want to go home.
Djinns are just super powerful Mr. Meeseeks.
Yeah.
Their existence in this plane is nothing but pain. So, like, this djinn is just telling Geralt, make this wish so I can go home already.
Yeah, I feel like the djinn's asking Geralt, like, what is your last wish? And Geralt's going, she smells pretty. I like the way she smells.
Yeah.
Well, no, it's kind of like Ryan Gosling and just the, what do you want?
I don't know.
What? I don't know. What do you want?
When your girlfriend says that she doesn't know what she wants for dinner. Or Lou, when your wife says it.
Oh my gosh. Full circle, guys.
Full circle. Hey, babe, where are you going to go for dinner tomorrow? Get her thinking about that now.
Smart.
Then we get to section 15. The Witcher, he understood what he wanted after he sees the djinn go after. It opens its mouth, extends its paws towards Yennefer, and in that moment, he realized what he wants. And then in the next section, the house explodes. Bricks, beams, and planks flew up in the clouds. So there's this massive explosion and laughter, they call it triumphant laughter, from the air genie. And he kind of goes off. He's gone. Everything is just silent after that. And then we kind of get the perspective of the people back in the tavern kind of waiting for this whole thing to blow over. So we get like Dandelion, like Neville, everyone's like, oh, it's over. Like, he's gone. Our town, like, nothing else is getting destroyed. It's really quiet now. Like, whatever. And then Dandelion's like, well, they're probably both dead. So we're going to go check that out. They go to investigate, but everyone else is kind of like celebrating in a way because they don't really care about, they're like, oh, we're going to erect a statue.
Yeah, they're like, the town's been saved.
Yeah, like, yay. But
Patrick and SpongeBob, we've saved the city.
Yeah. But they're like, oh, don't worry. We know that Geralt sacrificed himself. We're going to put a statue up. And then Dandelion's like, I know how the whole statue thing works. No one cares. And so he goes to check on his friend and Yennefer to see what the heck happened, if they're still alive, if there's anything even left to gather, which again, tennis balls into the next section, section 6. If anyone wants to talk about that.
Section 16.
So 16.
16.
What happens is it goes back to that blown up building, and it's Geralt and Yennefer, and they're waking up basically, and Yennefer's like, "Are you dead?" And he's like, "No." As he's clearing stuff off of his body and wiping dust from his face and everything, and she basically says, "I know what you wished for," and she's astounded. She doesn't have words for it. She's like, why did you wish that? And he kind of says, like, don't you know?
If you don't know, now you know.
We never really learn what the wish is. But we find out that it's this weird, this catch-22, right? So it's this wish that can't be fulfilled, but the djinn has to fulfill it. And so it's just this really weird section where Geralt and Yennefer kind of are free to express their feelings for one another.
The way it's described in this almost force field of rubble, like there is some kind of spell, and I imagine it's very similar to the one that Geralt cast while he was fighting the Striga at the beginning, where it's kind of like just that shield thing, or when he was getting the rocks thrown at him in Blaviken.
That would be the sign of Ard.
Thanks.
No problem.
So he's got Ard going, but I think that was like his last resort thing, and it's kind of like they open their eyes and they look around, and it's force field of rubble, and it's kind of like everything's fine around them. It's super clean, and that's when they get to have this like weird conversation about. She realizes that, oh snap, the Witcher actually does have feelings for me, and I don't know if I have feelings for him, but I kind of do right now in this moment.
They do the dirty.
They do it.
In a very dirty room.
In a very dirty room. Exclusively dirty. It's rubble. It's the building has fallen to the ground.
The epitome of dirty.
And then she tells him, "You can call me Yen."
Yeah, that was kind of like that cutesy first date like nickname thing. Like, oh my gosh, you can put me in your phone as that name. Because she's like, no one's ever called me that before. Say it again. And he's like, Yen, Geralt, do it. Like, cut. Then it goes into the next
tennis
section.
Ball back to the other perspective of the mayor, Dandelion, and the priest walking up to the building, and Dandelion's thinking, oh my gosh, my best friend's dead. And Círdan is with them as well. And the priest is saying, well, they're both dead. Go ahead and call the grave digger. Have him start digging 2 graves in the thing. And like Matt said, the mayor's like, Geralt saved the town. We'll have a statue erected in his name. Blah, 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 blah. And Círdan and Dandelion hear some kind of like groaning, like, like I've got a broken leg and I'm unconscious, but like I'm trying to make noise to let everybody know that I'm alive is how they describe it at first. But as they get a little bit closer, they realize that's a different kind of groaning. And eventually they get within eyesight of our 2 protagonists here. And Círdan kind of stops and goes, he says this famous line that he said earlier, I don't like using grand phrases. Let's just give them a little bit of time and we'll come back. And Dandelion's like, what? What's going on?
He's like, no. I think we should really give them some space. It's like, no. I have to see if my friend's okay. He's like, no, I don't think you understand what I'm looking at through this cracked window. We need to give them some space. Yeah. And then he's just like, oh, okay, solid. There's just a lot of confusion, which is surprising for a frat boy dandy to be confused about.
To be fair, for frat boy dandy, that's not a typical time in which you do such activities.
I don't know. In his book,
so I'm
I think that's
argue
the
with
perfect
that.
time.
I'm going to argue with that because the book opened up with Geralt doing such an activity as an alarm clock.
At an appropriate time.
That's true.
Okay, I'll give you that.
But that is the end of this chapter, right?
Yeah.
So
then,
what was the last
ahead,
wish
Sean.
then, boys? At the end of this chapter, what do you think the last wish was?
So he
That's a
had
good
to have
question.
done something with like tying his fate to Yen's. So either like, like the simplest answer is like, I want to live as long as, or Yennefer has to live as long as I do, or some shit like that, right? I don't know if you could ever come up with the exact phrase that is not breakable by a djinn, because like, and that's probably why we don't hear it, because like any phrase that, like even the phrase I just said, if Geralt wished, I wish Yennefer lives as long as I do, the djinn could just kill them both right there, and that technically is true, right? So like,
yeah,
but a djinn can't kill its master.
After the third wish,
it can.
But
It's free after the third
it can't be
wish.
free until it fulfills the third wish.
But anyway, so here, the idea that we could still debate about this is the point to which I'm trying to make, is like, you couldn't write something that a reader would be like, but that means the djinn could have done this, you know what I mean? So like, I think I like the way that the author left it. It's like, I'm not going to say it, but you get the general idea of what he wished for, and like, I could be proven wrong. Like in 2 books, we could find out what the last wish was, right? But yeah, that's
Matt?
what I thought at least.
I think the last wish, because they kind of made the nod that it had to tie their fates together, and they couldn't do one thing, like the djinn had to fulfill it. So just Geralt being Geralt, I think that his last wish was that he would either be with Yennefer at some point in the future, like before they die, like they're going to end up together, or that he was just going to have sex with her, because that would require both of them to be alive to happen, and that wish couldn't be fulfilled until they did it. So the djinn would be gone, and they could have sex whenever. And they end up having sex, which it almost seems like she doesn't really have any control over it. She's just like rubbing him down like, oh, you've like tied our fate together. I guess I have to, like, I don't know if I can fulfill that. And he's just like, well, yes, you can. And then they just kind of do it. There's no like, I don't know why she's sleeping with him necessarily. There was no prior feelings until he made the wish.
But there was a little bit. I mean, like in the previous parts of these chapters, like she mentions that, like, you know, I'll have you.
Yeah, she appreciated that he brought her apple juice.
Yeah.
But at the same time,
if that's not good enough a reason, Matt, I don't know what else you need.
Well, she's also been using her looks and her power to her advantage her entire life. Anything she's ever wanted, she's got. So like Geralt's no different. He's just expendable. That's my point. Is like she doesn't need him to get what she wants. But maybe he made a wish that he would get very similar to like what Dandelion said. He's like, I want to have, you know, I want the girl who doesn't like anybody, who will not lay with any man, to lay with me. I want her to have me over anyone else. That's like Yennefer. Maybe he wanted her to have feelings for him.
So maybe maybe something like he wished that he lived eternity with Yennefer or some shit like that.
Yeah. I mean, again, I think it's a cool move because technically there's a lot of ways that could have gone, but we know that their fates inevitably are tied together. So
how about you, Sean? What do you think the last wish was?
I'm with you on this one, though. I think they somehow, I don't know the exact wording that could have been used to get around every possible loophole, but it was something along the lines of that we die together, or that our fates are inexplicably tied, or something like that. Or that we have a child together, or something like that.
Oh, that would be.
Right, because she can't ever have a child or something.
Yeah, she's infertile, but it's like, God, you son of a bitch.
So
yeah.
I gotta grant it.
So it's kind of one of these catch-22s where the djinn can.
I just had a thought, but I'm gonna wait till after the voice of reason to say it.
Okay, so the voice of reason then, go for it, Matt.
There's only a few pages. The chapter 7 is the voice of reason. That is it. But I loved the ending. There's, even though the last wish chapter, there was just so much going on. It was the for sure climax of the entire book. The last chapter is absolutely hilarious. So as we remember from the last voice of reason, this is when Geralt is getting ready to leave Yennefer, and she's like pretty much resupplying or creating all of his like potions and things that he doesn't have readily available. He can't just go get the ingredients. He has to go to her to get them. So she's trying to convince him not to pursue Yennefer, blah, blah, blah. But in this point, Geralt and Dandelion are leaving Meliteles, or however you pronounce it. That
you dumbass slew.
Yeah. Drake.
We need an entire thing of all of us trying to say the same word and all of the poor mispronunciations we have.
Meliteles. But
Meliteles.
They are leaving the temple, and as soon as they leave the grounds, there is Talus and Falwick, right? Is that how you say their name?
And Talos, I think.
Okay. So the knights that Geralt has threatened to spank the younger one, which is Talus or Talus, he's like the 18-year-old fresh out of the academy guy that embarrasses himself and just is outmatched in wit by Geralt and Yennefer. But there they are waiting for them to leave the temple, and Geralt's like, Dandelion, just follow my lead and don't say anything stupid. Don't interrupt me. I'm going to get us out of this. And he's just like, no. Like, he goes, no, seriously, don't open your stupid mouth. Like, you're going to make things worse. So they walk up to find that the young guy he's got a sword out already, has been waiting for Geralt, and he wants to challenge him to a duel, but he can only do that because he's a knight, if Geralt is also on the level of a knight. So if he turns down the request, he's unworthy, which means essentially that they're going to hang him in the streets. But if he accepts the duel, Geralt is temporarily, as I read it, a knight until the conflict is resolved. But then they throw in the additional thing that if you fight back and you injure him with your sword, or you cause, that damage, like, we're going to take you in anyway, and then you're going to be prosecuted and killed. So Geralt's like, so my options are death or death, or I just have to let this kid kick my ass. And, Dandelion wants to speak up, but Geralt's like, not a word, blow it off. But then there is this dwarf, which kind of, I think, brings the whole, like, half-breed problem in this book, where, like, Geralt is kind of, like, half human, half whatever. And this dwarf, he's not, quote-unquote, normal to Falwick, and he makes that, the dwarf comes up and he introduces himself. He's very polite to Geralt. Geralt's very polite back, but then Falwick's like, oh, you mutant. And then the dwarf's like, excuse me, like, we are knights, and we are not going to speak to anybody like that, and especially while I'm standing here, because I'm not like you, so watch what you say.
Yeah,
and he's just like, whatever. He's a witcher. You get the idea that
this dwarf is like, he's been told by the king of these lands, which I forget the name of the king, but he's been told by the king of this land, like, hey, look, you are my eyes and ears out here. Like, I realize that, like, these Knights of the White Rose, like, they are a prestigious group, but, like, they have pride too. So, like, just be out there and be my peacekeeper, essentially, is what he's been tasked with. And the dwarf, as Matt said, is, like, very polite and very gentlemanly about it. Like, I'm here for this. And, like, the young lads challenge you to a duel. And, yeah, you're probably just going to have to get your ass kicked here. But, these are the rules. And if you raise a hand to hurt him, I'll be here to, deliver the king's justice kind of feel.
Right. Yeah, it's because he's the prince's favorite. And the Witcher sums it up and he says, if I understand, I have to fight the duel because if I refuse, I'll be hanged. If I fight, I have to allow him to kick my butt because if I touch him, I'll be put to the rack. He's like, right? Did I get that right? And they're like, yep, you got it.
Yeah, but then this dwarf, he's kind of continues to repeat that point, like, if you do damage to him, then you will be prosecuted. So as long as you don't do any damage to him, you're good to go. And Geralt's like, all right, I got this. So he hops off the horse. He's like, Dandelion, hold this. I won't be long. He's like, but Geralt, he goes, shut up. I got this. And this amazing scene takes place where, like, classic high school meet me at the flagpole fight happens. Or I can't even say high school. That's like some middle school stuff. So all the guards that are there.
Yes. Hold on, listeners. Yes. Brunswick school systems only had fights in middle school. We hit each other with cars in high school.
Well, I'm just saying, like, a meet me by the flagpole is totally like a middle school thing. Like, fights don't wait till flagpoles in high school. But regardless, this circle, a very loose circle, as I said, forms around these two. So we have Geralt, who we know is just will already embarrass this guy. And then we have the try-hard, fresh out of the academy, Talus, who is immediately from the get-go just tries to start swinging at Geralt, and Geralt's just embarrassing him. He's not even trying, and the kid is just exhausting himself. And right before the fight, Falwick's like, no, don't use your super sharp Witcher sword. Use my sword. And Geralt's like, this is really heavy. He's like, oh, it's as heavy as his sword. And Geralt is almost kind of making fun of him for having a heavy sword because it's probably hard to use. I'm imagining he's like, this is stupid. But Geralt, nonetheless, is just kind of dodging effortlessly all of these kids' advances. All of his strikes are just embarrassingly bad. And finally, Geralt does a return swipe and hits the sword that Talus blocks his hit. But his sword bonks him in the head and just gouges him. So technically, Geralt does no damage, and the dude hit himself in the face with his own sword. And I mean, he's just badly hurt. He digs his face in the ground. As I imagined, he just starts bawling like a little baby. And Geralt just, yep, here's your sword back. And then Falwick is just outraged. He's just like, he drew blood. And then the dwarf goes,
him.
He goes, ap. Everybody chill. He hit himself in the face with his own sword, which means technically Geralt didn't do anything to him. And then Geralt kind of looks at the dwarf. We're done here, Geralt. Have a good day, buddy. You too, man. Hope to see you later. And Falwick's like, what? He's like, are you kidding me? So, dude, I was dying reading this because it's like, Falwick is so outraged, like, I'll get you, Witcher. And he's just like, deuces. He rides off into the sunset.
Tell your bro to hold up your sword a little bit stiffer next time he won't hit himself in the face.
It's so dumb. And Geralt leans over because they're going back to the temple to kind of like thank Nenneke for, taking them in and giving him the time and yada, yada, yada. And he's like, not a word of this to Nenneke. If she finds out, there will be hell to pay. And he's just like, okay, I guess I can try to keep my mouth shut. And I can let one of you guys take over. I love this.
No, that was perfect. That was great.
That was perfect.
It's so funny.
So then there's the second part to the Voice of Reason, and it goes back before the first part. It's Geralt and Dandelion leaving the Temple of Melitele.
Meliteles.
Meliteles.
So when they're leaving, Iola and him touch hands.
Hola.
Iola. And they both get this vision of what's going to happen. And it says blood, 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 bones like broken white sticks. And it's this terrible death that they see. Both Yola and Geralt see this death as they're leaving, and it's the magic of it is so crushing that it pulls Geralt's medallion down, and it forces him to bend over under the weight of this medallion. That's how strong this magic is. And Yola's like seconds away from passing out. So that's how they actually end the book is both of them realizing how, I assume it was how Geralt's going to die.
Well, I don't know if it was that, because like just to go in a little bit more detail about it, like they go through much more, and in my mind, it's Yola's just like screaming this, like the priestess that took a vow of silence is just like, as soon as she touches Geralt, just like a trigger goes off and she just starts spewing this like prophecy, like what was the name of that one professor in Harry Potter?
Professor Trelawney.
Trelawney, like when she touches Harry or like she touches his hand or something, like she just like starts spewing the prophecy. That's kind of like the vibe I got. And then like she goes like into kind of what they describe as like a seizure. Other girls like come by and like, Nenneke like quickly goes over and like holds her down, and like another priestess is holding her legs down. After the episode, they cart her away, and Nenneke like turns to her and is like, you knew about this? Because I don't know how she knew that Geralt knew, but Geralt answers, yeah, but what am I going to do about it? I've known this. And like you get the sense that Nenneke was right. Something is wrong. Something in Geralt's future, it's going to be very, very bad. And not just like bad for him, like bad for lots of people. So you get the idea that one, Nenneke was right, and two, Geralt's been living with it for as long as the Voices of Reasons have been going on, which probably a few days at the very minimum, and the street gun counter. And yeah, like Sean said, that's the end of the book. And like, I think that is a great cliffhanger. I already bought and downloaded the second book. I'm super excited to start picking this one back up.
Oh, did you? Okay. I can do it then too.
And I seriously, like when this happened, it caught me so off guard because this does not happen in the show. Like at all.
Yeah, same.
They never even go to this temple as far as I know, but it's crazy because I didn't know if this was a tie back to like in what timeline the Jinn story happened, but I have a feeling that the Jinn is not done with Geralt and that maybe his last wish hasn't been fulfilled in some way. So part of me feels like it's going to come back, but the fact that like from the beginning, and I don't know, I'm pretty sure it was me. I will pat myself on the back if I have to, but I think I said that when Yola's trying to dig this information out of Geralt, there was like the one voice of reason where he was almost in a trance, like having a one-sided conversation with Yola, and he gets to a point where he's like, you need to stop now. You really need to stop. And then he comes out of it, he's like, hey, you're digging too far in my brain. Mm-hmm. I don't like this.
Had this episode that Yola just had happens after what you just brought up.
Does it?
Like, that was my prediction, is that, like, she was going to dig too far into Geralt's brain and find something that was bad, and she did by touching him before he left, which is probably on Nenneke's order to do that. because they didn't get that one-on-one time that Nennika wanted where she could find that out. And Geralt's leaving, and this was her last shot to get that information out of Geralt, and now she has it. And Geralt's like, I tried to tell you. I really did, but you didn't listen. But I've known this all along, and I didn't want to burden you with the knowledge that something bad is going to happen in the future. So we don't know what it is, but, I mean, we know that there's blood involved because it says it
blood,
3 times.
bones, and death.
I'm rereading it, and Nennika sees it, Iola sees it, Dandelion kind of sees it a little bit, and so does Geralt. And as Nennika's leaving and taking care of it, Geralt says, "Don't say anything, Nennika." And she's like, I saw it. You can't go. And he goes, "I have to." She's like, "Did you see that?" And he goes, "Yes, and this isn't the first time. And there's no point looking over your shoulder."
Oh, that's so
Some
good.
ominous tones, man.
Right, so, like, the whole idea of a djinn, you think about, like, they evaporate in the air. Where do they go? Like, can they just come back whenever?
They just go to the plane, man.
But is that...
They ascend to another dimension.
Well, so he's
That's
not
my thing,
released, right? Like he's not free because the wish is impossible to fulfill.
See, I think you guys are, what is it? You're having correlation, not causation. I think you're thinking because the last wish was the last chapter before this, you think that they're related, but I'm not sure that they are.
Yeah, there's just so much with Geralt that we don't know. We know the whole idea of the child, which if you've seen the show or even if you've read the book, you know that there is
The law of surprise.
The law of surprise child that is still going to come into play at one point. In the show, they dive straight into that. They have like 2 timelines happening at the same time, which is nuts. But I can't stop now. Like, this is...
We have to.
I can't stop.
We're going to stop season... This is the last episode of season 1 without maybe a recap. But the last book... We've closed the book of The Last Wish, first book in the Witcher series. Done. It is shut.
Done.
It is shut.
All right. Well, let's end it there, and let's save all of our thoughts and hopes and wishes for this recap episode.
All right, boys and girls. Thank you for listening to this episode of Hearthbound. As always, please give us a shout out on Twitter. Tell Sean that he looked really good today. I noticed him in his little crew neck sweater. He looked really nice while recording. Tell him he looks nice, and we'll see you guys in the next episode of Hearthbound.
I mean, don't stop. Please send me compliments.
Good night, everybody.
Until next time.
There it is. We have finished our first book together as a book club podcast. Congrats on making it through with us. Regardless if you've joined us in the middle or have been here since episode 1, we are truly grateful for all the support and kind words we've received while making this season. While we may be going on to a new story next season, we'll be back in the realm of Witcher very soon. We will have one more episode to recap our thoughts and feelings on this book, as well as announce which book we'll be covering in season 2. So make sure to follow us on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook at HearthboundPod. While you're there, let us know your thoughts on our first season. Did you like our episode structure? What would you like us to do more or less of? How could we make the podcast more enjoyable for you? Let us know on any of those social media channels or just shoot us an email at hearthboundpodcast@gmail.com. Lastly, as planned, we are starting a huge Witcher-themed giveaway now that we have completed The Last Wish. So head on over to those aforementioned social media channels to make sure you don't miss out on your chance for some epic free loot. That's all for now. Thank you for listening, and we'll talk to you in the next episode of Hearthbound. social media channels. The social media channels.